I think we could probably get going at 6:01 by my clock.
You're good to go. Recording
Okay.
started.
All right. So good evening, everyone. This is the September 9th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. This meeting is being held virtually. The chair has to ask, in accordance with Massachusetts general law, whether anyone is taping the meeting, and if so, if he or she would make himself known. Seeing that there's no one taping it or commenting. Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Hector,
I'm here.
Chuck,
Yeah.
Jim,
Present.
Tom,
Here.
Lillian,
Here.
Jeremy,
Present.
and I am present. So everybody's here.
Great. Thank you very much for that. I think the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, August 26, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? Any comments on the minutes? I have none either. So do I have a motion? Do I have a, Tom, did you have comments?
No, all you need to do is just
Yeah.
call
Yep.
the roll. Yeah, move the question.
Chris, can you take the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Hector,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Lillian,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. Okay, so consider those approved. The next item on our agenda is the discussion of the latest draft version 6 of the financial overview report. And the version that we'll be discussing today and that Mark will put up on his screen is the one that he circulated this morning, which has the updated graph diagram on page 3. So I would, and again, I think the intent is that this is going to be our final discussion of this document. Any comments or changes we'll incorporate as appropriate. And then I would propose that we would have a vote at the end of the discussion to approve or not this document. So
I have just one question.
please go ahead.
On that first page, the cover page,
Yep.
we normally have the seal at the top, and it says Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Are we deleting that this year?
No, that's an omission. Mark, is there a place where we can fit that seal?
Yes, we could probably put it somewhere up here in the top of the corner. Did everybody see my cursor?
Yeah.
Put it up around the corner here in the top right corner.
And
Okay.
will we put the Town of Barnstable CFAC
You want
also?
the
as a
CPAC
heading?
seal?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Last year, I'm looking at last year, Mark, we put on the top left.
Top left? Okay, I'll put it on the left then.
Yeah. So wherever it fits. Last year, it took up a lot of space, but I guess the same size will fit this year too.
Maybe we could move the summary one space down.
Yeah. And then Lillian, you're raising a good point. Last year, the last several years, at the very top of the page were the words Town of Barnstable, and then below that,
Right.
Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee.
Yeah, that's what I just had said at the beginning.
Yeah, well, I thought you were just talking about the seal.
No, we
seal.
normally have the seal, and then we have Town of Barnstable
got
in
it.
all caps.
Got it.
And in a lower types, we have Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee,
Right.
which identifies that it is our report.
Right. So if we can insert those Mark, as appropriate, that would be great. Thank you, Lillian, for pointing that
I'll
out.
copy it from last year.
And
Um,
Hector, can I just confirm that the only difference between what Mark is showing and what you sent us previously is that one exhibit on page 3?
yes,
Thank you.
Yep. all right. So I'm looking for any comments on page 1.
My only comment, Hector, was at the last meeting. I'm pulling up the page now. At the last meeting, I suggested in the paragraph, just the last paragraph in there, that we write the complete 533-page budget document is available. That we add the word document. Because I think it's the document that's available.
Okay, where would that go? That language go?
Mark just put it in.
Okay,
Yeah, that's perfect.
okay, good. All right, anything else on page 1?
Looks good.
Good. Okay, page 2.
I just have one question on page 1.
All right,
The seasonal populations estimated 150,000. It references last year's budget document, which I mean, I think is probably accurate, but also it's kind of just referencing oneself.
Yeah.
And it seems like that data might be more useful coming from another source. So my assumption is that the number is the same, but I feel like I would be more comfortable with it if it was referencing a non internal source, namely us.
well, I think the town in its budget document makes this estimate. And I agree with you, Jeremy. We should, if anything, we should reference the 2025 budget document. But your suggestion is that we reference something else other than the town's estimate?
Or I think if it's, I think maybe an updated one, but that was maybe
150,000 is
Well, I assume
clearly,
the town's budget document references another source, so we could reference that same source.
Yeah, it's probably some census data somewhere. So yeah, whatever that source is referencing seems like we could work our way backwards.
okay. Mark, is that possible? The 150,000 is clearly just a round number. So it's a ballpark estimate. Mark, do you know the source of that data?
Not at the top of my head. I will have to do some research to see if I can find some organization out there that does estimated summer populations for Cape Cod.
Okay.
As Jeremy referenced, this is just an internal estimate.
Yeah,
We always estimated our population approximately triples.
Yeah.
In the
Well,
summer.
I'm wondering if we could, if you're looking at it, whether we could reference a 2025 budget document or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
yeah, at a minimum, that's what I would recommend.
It should
Mark,
be 2025, whatever it is.
yeah, Mark, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on this, but if there's a handy data source, otherwise I would just change 2024 to 2025
Okay.
in the footnote.
Done.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeremy, for that. That's a good catch. Next page, page 2. This some of the language here was massaged by Chuck. Chuck, thanks for dedicating the time to do this. And on page 3, are there any comments on page 2, government structure?
No, it looks good.
I guess I'm editing my own edits, but on the third paragraph, the first sentence, I'm not sure we need the word will. I'll leave that up to Mark. I mean, it makes it sound like it's
That's,
Take it out.
I like that. I like the deletion.
Yeah, because we're already in fiscal 2025. So
Yeah. Other than that, it looks really good. Thanks, Chuck.
and then I had one more edit of myself, I guess, under the last paragraph there. are 18.5 million with, and then I change it to, or drop the,
Yeah,
and
Okay.
change that to of, with total revenue of 249. And yeah, change AT to OF.
Yeah, that's good.
All right,
Yep,
I'll be quiet.
okay, good, thank you.
we're good with that one.
Yeah, nice work on that, Chuck.
Page 3, then, general fund revenue and expenditures. What do people think about using revenues plural in the header?
I think that makes sense because it's coming from multiple sources.
Yeah, so Mark, if you could just change the header for page 2 and page 3 to revenues with an S. All right, just so people understand, the diagram on the top of page 5 has been updated with 2020 fiscal 2025 data. So it is to scale for the spending and income and investment flows. So there was some discussion last time that people thought it was too busy. I think it does an okay job of sort of giving a big picture view of the funds that come in, spending goes out, and then the capital investments. So I would propose that we use this.
Yeah, maybe next year we could figure a way to make it simpler.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a question on page 3 under general fund reserves. Yeah, line 4.
General fund reserves,
Yeah,
page
that's
3.
right. Yeah, on page 3, it's on the right-hand side of the pie chart.
Yeah, okay,
Line 4 says YOY,
yeah,
and I wonder if we should have year over year and then paren YOY, because we use it, Chris uses it again later on in the report.
sure. We can do that.
Yeah, because not everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
And then put it in paren, because it does appear again.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. But other than that, that's very clear.
Jim, Tom, any questions, suggestions?
Consistent with what we looked at last week.
Yep. All right. Page 4, we've changed the header to revenues.
Yeah.
This is essentially the same as last 2 weeks ago.
Yep. I didn't see any changes.
Looks good to me.
Yep.
Chris, any comments?
I do have one actually, and I'm driving, so I'm sorry, but on the second paragraph, that big paragraph at the top,
Yeah,
towards the bottom, it says the towns, apostrophe S, increased its contribution.
yeah,
There's a grammatical
yeah.
error there. So it
Drop
should
the
just be the
apostrophe.
town.
Yeah, drop the apostrophe S there, Mark.
And then at the end of the sentence, there's a comma, health insurance premiums grew an average. There should be and or a separate sentence, or just needs to be reworded a little bit.
Increases kind of. And so insert.
After the 50%, yeah.
Yeah,
The word and.
Also, on that same sentence, actually the last line, maybe this is for Mark. Did health insurance premiums grow an average of 8.8, or I don't see the cause and effect here. Are we describing what happened to premiums, or what happened to the town's expense for health insurance premiums?
There's 2 factors that impacted the increase. the budget for health insurance, factor number one was an average increase of 8.8% in the premiums itself. And then the second factor was that the town is now contributing 70% towards the cost of the health insurance premiums for employees as opposed to 50%.
Okay, so those are two separate thoughts. They're not one modifying. Okay, cool.
I would also just delete the comma after 50%.
Right.
All right.
All right. Otherwise, looks good. Mark, you mentioned that you have checked all these links and QR codes. Is that correct?
I did. They worked on my phone.
Okay.
Everybody else had a chance to try it. But
Maybe I could ask everybody in the committee to do the same in the next day or so. And if you have any issues with the QR codes or the links, to let Mark or me know.
Okay, before we leave that line, could you put a comma after 50%?
Jim just suggested we drop the comma.
No,
How
we
did you
need
put
to-
after the 50%?
No, we need the 50, because it's a completely different sentence.
It's not a separate sentence.
It's a
Yes,
separate,
health insurance premiums grew an average of, that's a whole sentence.
we're,
But that's not-
we're saying 50% and health insurance premiums grew. So you're saying, Lillian, it's a separate phrase
Yes,
and it deserves a comma. I'm indifferent, whatever people want.
whatever you want to do, I don't care.
A comma is incorrect, but I understand Lillian's point, which is that the reader may get lost in there. So
That's
one thing
correct.
you can say is the town can increase its contribution to active employee health insurance costs from 70 to 70 from 50%, as well as health insurance premiums grew at an average of 8.8%. That makes
Or-
it clear
But
there's
if
two
you add
different
as
ideas.
well as, it just sort of
Yeah.
makes them think too hard.
The alternative is to put a period after 50% and just have the last sentence read, health insurance premiums grew an average of 8.8%.
Just put a comma there, it'll work.
Yeah, that'll work. Well,
A comma will work.
Okay. Comma it is.
There we go, thank you.
And can I ask in the paragraph to the right of municipal operations spending,
Yeah.
is the detail intended to total to 49.6? Because I don't get 49.6 when I add the individual numbers. So I'm not sure if one of the pie chart pieces is not reflected in the paragraph. We get into micro detail, and then to not have the numbers add kind of makes me scratch my head.
What number did you get?
I don't know. I can do it again quickly, but it was less than 49.6.
It may be that there's some small amounts that aren't included in
I'll do it now.
in the text. All right, well, maybe,
yeah, it's a rounding. That's all it is rounding. And maybe it
Yeah.
comes out 49.5 or 49.7.
yeah,
I get 48.1. So either I keep doing the math wrong or I'm missing something here. But I mean, it wasn't a rounding thing. It was off.
All right, I'll double check the math.
okay,
Page 4, okay.
right. Thank you for paying attention to detail. It's important here. All right, moving on to page 5, enterprise funds budgets, $50 million.
I had just a general comment on this one. It seems like, if I'm reading this, and I don't know much about the budget, that most of the non-user fee covered costs are going to the HYCC, but we don't have a comment anywhere on why. And I'm not sure we need it. I'm just raising it. The golf and marina were kind of peanuts compared to the HYCC, but we don't really ever, to my recollection, explain.
Well, in the top paragraph, Chuck, the third and second line from the bottom, it makes the point that that 3 operations are covered by by subsidies, and Hyannis HYCC is one of them.
No, that's my point. We point out that 3 do, but the reality is the vast majority of the subsidies go to the HYCC, but we never call it out. So I'm just raising the point. Somebody could scratch their heads and said, well, what makes that particular enterprise fund so needy?
Yeah.
Do you have a suggestion, Chuck?
No, because Hector, I don't know why it's so needy. Again, I'm just trying to call out something that by reading it. There's also a funky font in the blue column on the right. The 43,156 looks like a different font.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah. And that needs to be fixed. Mark, is it the HYCC, has it ever been self-sustaining?
No, it has not. In most of that contribution, well, more than half of it anyways, is the debt service. They've never been able to cover any of their debt service. The bonds that we've issued to make improvements, to build the facility and make subsequent improvements. That's what most of that subsidy is. And then there's some of it is for the operations as well.
Is it worth making a note that most of that subsidy goes towards debt service? I mean, it says that user fees don't cover costs for all 3 of them, but if that's unique to the HYCC, should that be noted?
But it's not for debt service, it's for operations. They can't cover their operations.
Well, didn't Mark just say that a lot of the subsidy was because of debt service costs?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one way to do this would be after, in the second line from the bottom of the paragraph, after the word fund, community preservation, no, excuse me, after HYCC Enterprise Fund, bottom line of that paragraph, put a footnote, and then at the bottom of the page, insert a footnote. HYCC shortfall is largely comprised of debt service, something like that.
Yeah. I have a question. I thought that we at last meeting decided to put schools after the general fund revenue expenditures. And that's why we had the pie chart, and we had decided because schools were the largest part of the budget, we were going to put it right after that.
After general fund
Yeah.
or after enterprise fund?
No, after general fund.
Yeah, I think you're
some
probably
reason
right that we had agreed to move schools up.
Yeah, we
But
did.
my thought, Lillian, is that general fund and enterprise funds, should be sequential, and then maybe move schools up as page 6, where fire districts are now. In other words, move public education from page 8 to page 6.
So then do you, if you're thinking of all of the expenditures, are you then going to put CIP after that?
Not necessarily. We're just talking about schools right now.
No, I know, but what you're
Yeah.
saying is that you were dealing with general fund budgets, and then you thought you'd deal with enterprise funds. And so I'm saying, while we're still dealing with funds, do you want to put in CIP after enterprise and before we start schools and fire districts? And
I'm indifferent. If people feel strongly about moving CIP up, I'm fine with that. But I think it's good to move public education up. That would be my recommendation, to put it after enterprise funds as a new page 6. What do other people think?
I'm fine with that suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, I support that as well.
Do it again, Hector, you're gonna reorder the pages?
Yeah, so just take the public education page, Mark,
Yep.
which is now page 8, and move it up. Insert it after page 5, so it becomes a new page 6. And then page 7 would be fire districts,
Okay, so it's gonna go after fire district, okay,
before fire districts.
before fire district.
And I don't know if you want to do this now or you want to do this after the meeting, but just
Oh,
make it,
no, I'm gonna do it after the meeting. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
made on the top format.
it's a little tricky to do. Okay, Lillian, thank you for that. I had overlooked that. General fund. I'm looking at last year's general fund enterprise funds. Yeah, Lillian, you're exactly right. Because last year, fire districts followed enterprise funds. Okay. All right, moving right along to the fire districts page, which will be the new page, will be page 7. It looked good to me. Anybody have any comments?
No, looks clean.
Well done.
All right. Moving along to the next page, capital improvement plan, 247.9 million. I thought this looked quite good as well.
Yep, I don't have any changes on this page. Or suggestions.
I didn't see any changes.
Chris, are you still driving?
I'm in a Star Market parking lot in Harwich right now.
Oh,
so.
good, you're not driving. All right.
Nope,
so
I'm
you,
looking it over with you.
okay. Star Market in Harwich?
Yeah, I had to go to Chatham for something, so.
Yeah.
I don't see any issues on this page.
Yeah. All right. Moving right along to Mr. Sproul's handiwork, public education. And just to reiterate, this is going to be moved up.
I'll go back to that first number, the 86.9. It's still, I mean, that's the approved number, but Mark had explained this last time. We lead off in the opening page of an 89.7. So I'm not sure if we should change this to be consistent. We talked about this a little bit last time.
Right.
I think
And
there's logic to that. But
there's a logic to changing it. Mark, what's your recommendation?
Consistency, yeah, so we can use the higher number here, Jim.
Okay.
Do you want to replace it?
yeah, 89.7, please.
All
And that
right.
includes circuit breaker and school choice spending, so, which
Right.
is
Okay.
not general fund
I
sources.
forgot what the,
All right. So we need to change that in the header and then in the first line of the first paragraph. Right?
Right, that's the first line has already been changed, and so the header's changed.
Oh. My version says 86.9.
No, look at the screen.
Yeah, no, I see. I know that's changed, but I've got the version up on my monitor. That's the one that I'm referencing. Okay. All right.
thank you.
The impacts of student demographics paragraph. I think throughout the document, we've been spelling out FY 2025, FY 2024. And then 25 at the beginning of that same sentence.
So we're not using FY at all in this document, Chuck?
I think we're using FY. I just don't think we're using FY and then 2 numbers. I think we're using FY and 4 numbers.
Right.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
just to stay consistent.
Yeah, okay, that's good. And fiscal 2024 in the same line. Okay. Are we good with public education?
No, just before, in funding overview, the second paragraph, the second line, formulaic changes in 2029, is that 2019, is that FY 2019 or just 2019?
Be FY.
Okay. Just trying to be consistent. So it'd be FY. Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
all right. Moving on to Mr. Keene's paragraph, his page. Tom, you did great work collapsing this down to one page. Thank you for that.
It's very well done, Tom.
Yeah, very
I could just
nicely
use
done.
2-point type, but yeah, thank you.
Spoken like a true author.
On the 4th line in the first paragraph, is it marking condition or plural?
Conditions plural, it should be.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Where is this again?
It's the fourth line, right at the beginning. There's a hyphen, market conditions.
Right, conditions before the period.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank
Got
you.
it.
I'm telling you, Chet gets the Eagle Eye Award. He picks up everything.
Yeah,
And now this is just a wording thing, but kind of just below where the cursor is, it said is then subtracted from your home's value before you are then taxed. My suggestion would be is then subtracted from your home's value before your tax is calculated.
Mark, I do have a question for you, and that is, I think I put the chart in as an image, and I'm looking at the chart and realized that example 1's underlined and example number 2 isn't. Do you want me to just send you the original?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll paste it in.
Yeah, I'll just send it to you so you can adjust it as you see fit.
Okay.
After that, Tom, after that first bold line, residential tax breaks, there should be an end parentheses. 25% is the average value. There's a parentheses.
Yeah, we can.
all
Yeah.
right. And then,
The other minor, oh, sorry, Hector, a
Go
minor
ahead.
thing in the chart where it says FY 24 everywhere, there should be a space between Y and 2 in there.
Right, to be consistent everywhere else, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
just a
right.
very minor thing.
Yeah.
And then in the fire district section there, it spells out fiscal year 2024 in the second line. So I don't know if you want to change that just to be FY or if you want it spelled out.
No,
Again, just for consistency.
yeah. And then in that same, so, all right, I'm gonna let Mark make that change. Mark, you let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, just I'm good with that one. Can we go back to Chuck's suggested change? Chuck, could
Yeah.
you tell me where that was?
Well, right there where you have the cursor, there's a statement, you are then taxed. And kind of up in the residential exemption paragraph, the 3rd line from the bottom.
You are
You
then
are then
taxed. Okay, before you are then taxed. And what do you want to change that to?
I'm suggesting we change it before your tax is calculated. It's just less. Because I
Okay.
think that's what happens.
Is everybody okay with that?
I am.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's clearer.
Mark, let me know when you're ready. I have one other change.
Okay, go ahead, Hector.
The second paragraph from the bottom, second to last line, the parenthetical, see page 6. I think fire districts is now going to be page 7 if I've got that correct. because we're moving public education up before fire district.
Correct.
Do you think people will be confused by the statement, in effect, piggyback off the town's property tax system? Would they know what that means?
Well, I think maybe it could be better phrased. The fire districts utilize the town's tax collection systems
Right,
to collect their taxes, to
yeah,
collect the fire district's taxes.
Yeah, language like that's fine. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe you could clarify that small section,
Utilize,
utilize the town's tax collection. Yeah, that's much better.
Utilize the town's tax collection system to collect their taxes?
To collect
taxes.
their taxes.
Okay. Oh, no, hold on.
Yeah. Are you okay with that, Tom?
And the only other thing, Mark, is when you go final on it, you probably want to take the very bottom graphic, the one with the property tax rates, and just bring it up a little bit. So it's, I think it should just,
There you go.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and even like that would be fine, all the way up.
Oh,
So it just looks cleaner.
it sure
And-
does.
Yep, perfect.
Stop.
Okay,
I was, I said it too many times. There we go.
Mark, you're a wizard. All right.
QR code works. I know it's very small, but I got it to work. I couldn't make it any bigger or it jumped to the next page.
Right.
All right. If no more comments on the property tax page, move to the first of two pages of the CWMP. Lillian, any comments here?
Well, I edited it based on your comments and questions about the unfunded mandate.
Uh-huh,
And then because we had more space, because Tom abbreviated his,
right,
I put back footnote 2 into the context of the regular text because it made more sense.
right.
And other than that, that's it.
Okay,
I, under costs, I had a suggestion.
how
The-
much will it cost me? Is that the section?
No, the one under costs,
Yeah.
where the cursor is now.
Yeah.
The sentence that starts, since that time, and we just say costs have increased due to inflation. I would say something along the lines, since that time, cost estimates have increased to well above $1 billion due to inflation. For two reasons. A, it's a little more specific than just saying it's increased. B, the way it's written now, the looking ahead section raises the $1 billion number. And it seems inappropriate for me that the first time we use that number is in the last section of the last page.
It's okay with me.
Would you go over that one more time, please?
Sure, I would just add something to what Lillian has. Since that time, comma, cost estimates have increased to well above $1 billion. And then just due to inflation, what Lillian already had there.
There, okay.
That's fine.
And if Mark thinks we can be more specific than that, great, but that's the number we put on the last page, so
Right.
I'd rather have it in the body of this section at the first time.
All right, any other comments on this page?
Should be a space between FY and the year here. FY 2025, FY 2029.
Oh, yeah, yep, good pick.
Yeah, sorry about that. And then the next line also.
Okay,
Good work here. It's hard to imagine to get that done in one page. That's incredible.
Yeah,
well, we have a second page here.
There'll be another one of those spacing issues right at the bottom of that page too. Unless it's under the QR code on the one I printed off. I don't know if it's on the next page in the document here. The financing, yeah, the second line of that FY 2025 to 29.
Yeah,
Okay, let me find it here. Oh, right, gotcha, Chris, okay.
all right. Moving to the next page.
Should there be a space between these two paragraphs, assessment and connection, right here?
Sure, we've got plenty of room to do that. Okay, and then at the bottom of this page, there's that dangling line. Do we want to get rid of that?
yeah, we could get rid of it.
I tried to get rid of it.
Let's play
And
around with that.
yeah,
I'm not sure how that got in there.
yeah,
Looks like it used to be part of a footnote, maybe.
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
is. I think it's in a footer.
Sorry, Mark, can we go back to the top of the page?
Yes.
So, do we need the clause at the end of that first paragraph, CFAC believes that? I mean, won't these two factors add to the town's funding challenge without our belief system? I mean, if somebody could take the other side of the argument, then I understand why we have it in there, but it just seems obvious to me that those two factors are going to add to the town's. It seems like a factual statement, not a belief statement. The other thing that I'll just, people can agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, so Chuck, I mean, this is CFAC expressing its point of view. I agree with you. It's pretty obvious, but by our stressing our belief, that just reinforces
Okay,
the
fine.
statement. So I thought I was fine with that.
okay.
But I just found something, and in financing on line 2, at the end of the sentences, revenue sources, we have its superscript 2. It should be actually superscript 1. Go all the way to the top. Second
Yeah.
line, it should be superscript 1. Because we only have 1. Can you superscript it? Where is it?
That's where the other line's coming from. There's another footnote in here someplace.
No, we don't need a 2.
I know, but it's automatically defaulting to 2 when I try to put a footnote in. So there's
Oh.
something embedded in the formatting here. Because see, we've already got this footnote, and that should be referencing this.
Yes, correct.
And when I tried to make that insert a footnote there, it automatically defaulted to 2. I'm gonna have to play with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave it to you then.
Under the, how much will it cost me to hook up to the sewer? The and should be before 4, not before 3.
Where are we?
Yes,
How
that's
much will
right.
it cost me to hook up? The word and should not be before 3, it should be before 4.
Right, correct.
And do we want to say property taxes, plural? We're talking about sewer use fees. I'm indifferent.
Well, that's a sewer use, it's not a tax.
I understand that, but we're
Yeah.
using plural in the word fees. So we want to say in item 4, do you want to say taxes or just leave it as tax? Doesn't matter.
I would leave it a tax because
Okay.
we're talking about individual.
And then I struggled with verbiage under what are my payment options? The last sentence in that paragraph, for example, a maximum credit of $18,000 allowed for, I don't know how this works. It's the verbiage just is odd to me. Allowed
Yeah.
for $30,000 cost claimed for up to or for
The work that was completed in that year.
right, but I'm not questioning the concept. I'm questioning the wording. I'm not sure. I can take an $18,000 credit against what? Do I have to have $30,000 in costs? What if I have 20? Can I take I don't know what the 30 is telling me.
Yeah, so.
You can take up to 18,000 if you spent $30,000 in that year. If you spent $20,000, then your credit would be less.
All right.
Chuck, the state tax credit is 60% of eligible cost up to a maximum eligible cost of 30,000. So 18,000 is 60% of $30,000.
Right.
So if your connection costs more than $30,000, you're only going to get $18,000. If it costs less than 30,000, you'll get 60% of whatever that lesser number is. So 60% of a $20,000 connection would be $12,000 tax credit.
All right. Well, I like what you just said, Mark, a lot more than what we've written here. I mean, I'm not wordsmithing this, and I can later, but I would say, for example, or just say, a credit of 60% of actual costs incurred is available up to a maximum of $18,000 or something like that. I just find this wording clunky.
Okay, I think these are all good points. Can I introduce another tax issue? This tax credit is not it's a refundable, sorry?
It's off state income taxes.
Right, but the issue is whether it's refundable or non-refundable. To take the full amount of the credit, you need to have $18,000 or more of property taxes due in that year.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with your property taxes.
No,
no,
income taxes. Your state income taxes need to exceed the 18,000. If
it carries over, you get a carryover.
Right. So it's not, you can't take so there's if the credit if the tax credit is refundable, then you could take all the 18,000, but since it's non-refundable, you can't. I would propose for the, sorry?
You consult your tax advisor.
Sorry?
I would just say here, consult your tax advisor.
Yeah.
You don't want to be giving tax advice out on taxes.
The alternative, which I think I like even better, is just deleting that sentence, for example. And that just eliminates the ambiguity. I don't know what we gain by having that for example.
Yep. I mean, I agree, Hector. 4 might be enough.
Yeah.
Do you want to say utilize Massachusetts state income tax credits?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, income tax credits, and then delete that last sentence.
We did. We got rid of the funky example.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Lillian, did that example come from the Barnstable Water Resources?
Yes, it did. It actually comes from the homeowner sewer connection guide.
By the way, I've spoken recently to a homeowner that just went through this and they said it worked very well. The way the town managed it, the hookup, everything. So that was good to hear.
Good. All right.
Okay.
Any other comments on this page 11?
Nope.
All right. The last page, the bottom left of this page, I think we had a header that said something like, how am I doing? Or what do we do? Tell us what you think. Do we want to put that back in above this box that says on a web browser, take a brief survey? If you have questions, I think we need a little header here. So that would be my thought, a brown box above that box mark that says, tell us what you think.
Or we welcome your comments. Oh, tell us whatever.
In all caps, Mark. And then Mark, maybe just move that box up down a little bit closer to the words on a web browser. Yeah, a little bit closer. Yeah, okay.
This link takes you to a brief survey. I don't have access to that survey. Who is going to monitor that survey?
I'm sorry, you don't have access to it. What?
No, if you follow this link to the survey, it's a 3-question survey that perhaps Neil created last year. He could monitor the responses to the survey because he created the survey. I don't know who did that this year.
I thought we decided that we weren't going to have the survey because we only got one response.
I thought I remembered the same thing.
Well, I just clicked on the link and it takes me to a survey.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does. Who's monitoring that survey?
Yeah.
I can't
not
see.
I'm
it.
assuming that's the one that Neil made. It's probably the same one, so we won't have access to that unless somebody wants to make a survey like that again. I don't know how that's done.
Well, I think I could go either way here. I'm not wedded to this. If we don't have access to the survey, then maybe we could just delete the link, delete the reference to the survey, and just encourage people,
Right.
if you have questions or comments, to email us.
Yep.
And Mark, who has access to that email account?
I do.
You do. Can you give me access to it as well as the chair?
Yeah, I'll check with IT and see if it's possible.
Okay. Okay.
Let's look at the looking ahead.
All right. So again, just to introduce this section, I think when I was making my case to become chair of this committee, one of the things that I said was that I wanted to, it's my aspiration for this committee to be more proactive, to be more relevant to what's going on in the town, and to be less purely financial. What I attempted to do here is just spell out what I think are some of the major issues in the town. This isn't an all-inclusive list. It's just 5 or 6 of the most important issues that the town council is dealing with today and will have to deal with in the immediate future. Each of them has financial implications. To this section, I added the second bullet about the supply and quality of the town's drinking water. That's from the operating budget report. And I made some other minor changes to make this neutral. This is not stated in a political way. It's simply saying to the reader, the town is dealing with a lot, and you owe it as a citizen to pay attention and to support the town council and the town administration as they seek to cope with the issues facing the town. And this isn't going to be a major issue, but it just makes this report and it just makes the report, it brings the report back to what some of the real issues that the town is dealing with. So that's my aspiration for this section. And as I say, it's everything's stated very neutrally, and it's basically saying, hey, citizens, pay attention. I don't know if anyone else has any comments on that. Chuck, any ideas?
Yeah, I am fine with having this section in there. I don't have any problem with it. I have a few, I don't know what the right word is, maybe softening suggestions for this stuff. And if you want me to go through them, I will. But as a concept, I heard what people said last time concerns wise, but I think that it's perfectly appropriate, since all of these have financial implications for the town, for us to at least put them on the radar screen.
Right. And that's all we're doing. We're just raising these as issues that we believe the residents and the taxpayers should pay attention to.
Could we go back to it? Because it's not on the screen.
Yeah, Mark, you accidentally switched. There we go.
I do have some comments, and I'm really happy that we are reinstating this. We used to have it, and we had suggestions like this, but like Chuck said, I would soften it a little bit. What we used to say is that we monitor and bring to the attention of the town council and the administration. I don't think that CFAC should say that the town council must do this, but I would like to soften it and say that we monitor it and we bring to the attention of the town council and the administration future financial issues.
So Lillian, if I could just interject, I know that we used to do this somewhat differently. This is a different approach for 2024, and
no, I understand that.
Yeah, and if you want to change the word "must" to something else, it's not meant to command the town council. It's just it's just saying the town council is going to have to deal with a variety of things. So, if the word "must" rubs you the wrong way, I'm happy to come up with a different phrasing. But
what I'm saying,
but I don't want to go back to what we used to do 10 years ago.
No, we're not trying to do that.
Serves anything.
I understand what you're trying to do. What I'm saying is that the "must" is a very strong word.
Okay.
What we can say is CFAC brings to the attention of the town council, because this is CFAC's looking ahead now.
Right.
So I think we should mention that the fact that this committee brings to the attention of the town council and the administration issues,
So
future important issues.
Yeah, but we're not bringing these 6 bullet point issues to the attention of town council. They know they have to deal with them. Chris, did you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, I would just simplify that to say Barnstable's town council faces a number of serious challenges, including, not that we're directing them to adopt any policies, just they face these challenges.
Good.
These are all factual things. I'm pretty happy with the way it was reworded. Just the top of that, I would change it to Barnstable's town council faces a number of serious challenges.
Good. I like that. That's more neutral, and it should address Lillian's issue.
Right, and
with the word must.
I would include administration.
Okay, I've put in
Yeah, I think that's-
administration.
So I know you have it at the
bottom,
bottom,
yeah.
but somebody might not get to the bottom, so I want to be, and administration should be capital A. Okay,
And then Hector,
Yeah,
I wrote the intro differently, but what you just came up with is perfectly fine by me. So
Right.
my
Yeah.
other suggestion is to start all the bullets with active verbs. So first one, paying for the more
okay,
and then the third one, financing major renovations. And that way all the bullets are action verbs to start.
okay, that's fine.
yeah, that's what I would have, that's what I was going to suggest as well. And that would be financing. It would be financing replacement and major renovations to our school buildings, because the replacements are also part of the CIP.
What is in prospect for replacement? I'm
The
not familiar.
replacements are basically the HVA systems.
Yeah, but that would come under a heading of the renovation, right?
Well, renovations are actually when they add new stuff.
Okay, all right, financing replacements and major renovations, okay?
Right.
Can we do that, Mark? Okay, all
And
right,
Got it done.
I've got one before we go into deciding whether that, and Chuck had that in his looking ahead in the operations budget. And that is the continued assessing the impacts of interest rates and inflation on the town's overall budget.
yeah, I don't know, I think that's an exogenous
Well-
factor that every public body has to deal with. I'm not sure that that needs to be called out here.
Well, because interest rates and inflation have been extraordinary.
Yeah,
And-
but that's
and
coming, that's in the past. Wouldn't you agree, Lillian, that inflation's come
Not
way back down?
necessarily. We don't know what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, 30 years out, we don't know, but in the immediate term, which is
Well,
what this is talking about.
Anyway, I throw that out because
Okay,
I thought it was a very good point that Chuck made. And
I
you
think though that's
can either
something
add
that
it or not.
I think every municipality needs to deal with that. These things are specific to Barnstable, I think is more the point of this section,
yeah,
rather than, everybody has to deal with potential inflation.
I think that's well put, Chris. By the way, Mark, the second line, since we added administration, we have to write face instead of faces.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Hector, I have one other bullet for the group to consider adding. Town Manager Alice just gave another update to the town council at the last council meeting on private roads.
Right.
What we're going to do with private roads. And I know, a few years ago, for CPAC had commented on, facing the private road challenge is another major consideration for us. And I'm just thinking, do you want to consider adding another bullet about private roads here?
I would, but let me ask, when we talk about, I think Mark Ellis raised the private roads issue in the context of the sewer project that would sewer private roads. And then the question that Mark asked, and is being debated, is whether the town would in the process of sewering a private road, take that road, in other words, make it a public road.
That's
Well,
one of 4 categories of private roads that he brought up.
yeah,
There are 3 other categories as well. And he presented all of those to the council and looking for some direction from them.
Right, but and I'm not opposed to this, but I'm simply trying to understand the context, because it is one of the issues that Els is considering taking over all of the private roads in the town of Barnstable?
No,
no,
he just wanted to present, the different categories of private roads, and he was seeking some direction from the town council as
Yeah.
to how they wanted to deal with them. There are
Okay.
many private roads in the community that'll never get taken as public roads.
Right,
For
right,
different reasons. So he's not advocating that we take them all.
right,
But certainly the category that is facing us on the forefront right now are those that are going to get sewer lines installed in them. What do we do when we finish with that construction project and we've renovated that road? Are we going to take it as a public road now and maintain it going forward? And that's the very first category we're going to have to deal with.
right. So Mark, can you, I'm happy to include a bullet on private roads. Can you suggest some language for a bullet?
Sure. Let me go back to the presentation and see if
Okay.
I can. I just want to do it in one bullet. I don't want to do it in 4 different bullets, but
Yeah, okay.
I
So
can
if you
add-
want to, do you want to do that and then just circulate it when you circulate version 7, and we can all take a look at it?
Sure.
If people are okay with that, I'm fine with that.
I just want to interject that I support Mark's inclusion of the private roads, because when we met with the town manager,
He brought it up as an issue.
he brought
He's
it
done.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with Mark,
Yeah.
Lillian.
Yeah.
I'm asking Mark just to
It's-
suggest some brief language here.
Yeah,
So we can, okay, so Mark, you'll do that, and maybe highlight the language that you insert, the new bullet that you insert in version 7.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving along. Any other comments on this section?
I do have a comment.
Mhm.
I felt as though I expressed some sincere concerns about I'll use my phrase, before getting out of our swim lanes. And yet I see no attempt. You just left the language there. So it leads me to think that either it's not important, or you believe that we should be expanding our role of CFAC into other areas that we don't currently have jurisdiction.
No,
what is it?
the point of these bullets is they all have financial implications for the town, Jim.
We don't do any work in housing policies. We don't do any work in local zoning. I mean, yeah, everything has a dollar attached to it.
Right.
We don't do any work in any of those areas.
We haven't to date. That's true. But again, when I introduced this section, Jim, I stated that my aspiration is to get the readers, the residents of the town, to be more involved and knowledgeable and vocal about issues that the town has to deal with. So this isn't saying CFAC gets involved in these.
I offered you to support that. I offered you an opinion, in which is you can use it as your words.
Right, and that's an option. And I'm happy to consider that if people at the end of this discussion don't want to, and we can vote if you like, but if people don't want to include this section as a CFAC section, I'm happy to, put in the header something like message from the chair or something like that.
Hearing you say the looking ahead section has been done before. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm asking you to consider is areas in which we have either no jurisdiction or skill sets in offering opinions.
If I can just comment, because I hear what Jim's saying. I took a different view on this. I didn't think necessarily the bullets were, potential projects for us. I thought what they were potential, meaningfully significant financial issues that the town needs to address. And in our purview as CFAC, if there's money being spent on something that we don't have the two pocket theory, then even if we're not experts in housing or other topics, if money being spent there and it's detracting from other things, and our job is to counsel the best we can and inform the public, and it's going to have an implication on tax rates or expenditures or cuts, then it's relevant. And so I wasn't viewing this necessarily as a list of bullet points where we wanted to get involved, as much as an acknowledgement that there's a lot of stuff going on that may impact our view and our counsel going forward. And
That's not what I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. That's not what the opening statement and the closing paragraph say. We're saying we're putting the town council on notice that they have serious challenges. And they have financial implications. That's our role in advising the town. That's the purpose of this document, is a financial overview of the town. So in here, we're saying that we want to provide, that this is a serious matter in which we want to provide financial guidance and to help with the budgeting process of our community. And
I don't know that we say that, Jim. We're
Well,
just,
Barnstable Town Council has faced a number of serious challenges, and there's 6 of them that you look at.
right, right,
Issues carries financial implications for the town.
right. This is,
And RAC taxpayers to knowledgeable, involved in speaking. I didn't realize that we were also advocating for speaking on these topics.
we are now, in my view.
That's what I'm saying. From what gives
So
us the right to say that? If we want
Is
to do
that the line that gives you pause, Jim, is about urging voters, residents, etc.? Is that the line that's
because that's
causing an issue?
way out of our areas of, I'm not crazy, Chris, about the topics that we picked. There's a whole range of ones. There was another good one just at the last town meeting, the DIF, right? But I think to be an advocate for positions that are political topics, I think is outside of our purview.
Okay, and Jim, I hear what you're saying. You're saying this box in no way advocates for any position. What it advocates is for voters to pay attention, because the town council and the town administration are facing a lot of issues. And there are other issues. Again, I'll repeat, this list isn't meant to be all inclusive. But
Well,
we're not
I
advocating.
think Jim makes a good point actually about urging voters to be knowledgeable, etc. I think we should limit it to CFAC is prepared to advise town council and administration when requested on these issues and any other issues. I think that might be the linchpin here that's causing Jim pause. If I'm hearing you correctly, Jim.
Yeah, the way we've taken on new topics is through advice, right? We are asked by town council or town administration to review certain topics.
Right.
You don't go off and say, here's some things that I think are important. Here's the reasons why they're important. Now, town citizenry, you pay attention to it, right?
Well, I think it's the opening paragraph is fine to acknowledge that these are significant issues the town is facing. And then the closing paragraph, I would agree, actually, we should change that to take out the part about urging voters and residents and all that, and just limit it to CFAC is prepared to advise town council and administration when requested on these topics and any other financial issues facing the town.
Okay, so the second sentence in the bottom paragraph, we could change it in in Jim's and Chris's idea to, instead of CFAC urges all voters, CFAC, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, I'll have to think of the words, but CFAC is prepared to, upon request, CFAC is prepared to get involved or advise the town council on these and
Yeah,
other
yeah,
matters.
I wouldn't even say get involved. To
Right.
me, I would eliminate those the last two sentences and say CFAC is prepared to continue advising the town council and administration when requested on these topics and any other financial topics. Would be something how I would word it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm willing to play with the words in that bottom paragraph. And Jim, I hope this addresses your issue. Again, I'm not inserting CFAC into political matters. This was written very in anodyne fashion, just to highlight some of the issues that I think the town faces.
In every one of those bullet items, you should have a word that says financing of some sort, something that comes under our purview. Deciding whether or not to support the installation of the community of massive infrastructure. So, we talk about, that should have some financial implication. It's like you did the one above it, financing the replacement of major, that falls in our wheelhouse. Adopting policies to create more housing does not fall in. There should be a financial component to that statement.
Okay, well, one of the items under consideration would be for the town, again, it's a statement of the obvious, but all of these have financial implications. We could use the word finance in each one of these bullets, but I think that's overkill.
But I think it speaks to the seriousness of CFAC and what our responsibilities are. Well, what we could do is just go through all of the bullets and see if we all agree on each one of them.
I mean, I seem to be the one that has the most heartburn. I'd be happy if you give me a day, I'll go back and take those bullets and put words in I think should be in there if you'd like me to do that. I mean, we don't, but it doesn't sound like.
So, Jim, if you want to take a crack at that, I'm happy to take a look at what you draft. But again, the point of this section from my point of view is just to highlight for the reader, this is a document that's addressed to the voters of the town, to the residents of the town, as well as the town council. And this is a document that I'm simply trying to make CFAC more relevant by flagging issues that the town administration and the town council are dealing with. But Jim, if you want to take a crack at drafting some language and send it my way, I'm happy to take a look at it.
I'll just be, yeah.
Okay. And Chris, I'll play with the bottom paragraph about CFAC being prepared upon request to advise.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jim made a good point about that. It's not our role to, urge voters to participate.
Right.
Our role is just to advise town council and administration.
Okay.
It's not what we're doing, the work that we're doing is being recognized, right? So for example, through Mark's work and the financial assumptions that we're going to review, that's been requested by the town council for us to be involved.
Right.
If you saw the last town meeting, there was a whole section on development improvement funds, I believe, DIF, if I got that right. And again, on that presentation was participation in the community, on the committee by a representative of CFAC.
Right. So
the messaging that's going out about wanting to be more involved is being heard.
Right. It's just one of my aspirations is that CFAC, by and large, in the past, we've gotten involved upon request. One of my aspirations for CFAC is that we're more proactive, that we as a group, if we feel strongly about an issue, that we raise our hand and say, hey, we'd like to have some input into this matter or that matter. And I don't know if others on the committee feel that way, but that's an aspiration that I have. Again, I'd like CFAC to be more relevant in town matters.
So maybe in that opening before the list, could we state that Barnstable's town council and administration have raised a number of serious challenges? Like, we are acknowledging that we're not just coming out of the thin blue air, that they've talked about it, and these are just some of the ones that have caught our attention.
No, I think that first sentence is sufficient.
Yeah, I think it's the first sentence is,
I think it's quite clear.
the town council has raised some issues. Citizens groups have raised other issues. So it's just, these are all challenges that we as a community face. So I'm not sure that that's necessary, Jeremy.
I think that last year we had decided that each one of us during the downtime we would identify issues that were relevant to the town that were coming up, and that we would do research and drill down, so that if and when we were requested for our advice or help, we would be there. So that was our expansion. And I hope that we can continue to do that. Whether or not we need to actually discuss upcoming policies, I leave it to you guys. Whether you want to identify them specifically, or whether, because we are limited in our responsibilities through our mandate.
We're currently limited, but our mandate could be expanded if the town council so directed. So up until now, we've had a very, in the last several decades, we've had very limited role. My aspiration is to have a more central role in advising the town council. Again, that's my aspiration as chair. So if we could sum up this, Mark, you'll craft some language for a bullet on private roads. Jim, you're gonna look at the entire section, or at least the 6 or 7 bullets, and maybe rephrase them in a way that you would find more appropriate. And then I'll commit to try to massage the final paragraph to be consistent with what Chris and Jim have advocated.
So could we see that?
Yes, absolutely.
Before we approve this final.
Yes, obviously we would need to do that. So
we need to meet to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so we won't be able to approve this draft at today's meeting.
Right.
But thank you all for understanding my goals here and trying to work with me on it. And I think we can certainly find a middle ground. All right. Any further discussion? Tom, any ideas? Okay, hearing none. All right. Thank you all. The next item on the agenda is to discuss the CWMP funding model that Mark sent around in an Excel spreadsheet several weeks ago to all of us. I'm happy to open the floor to any comments, questions that people may have.
Well, when we discussed it last time, the one item that we changed was the $16 million. So do we anticipate that there'll be any changes or rescission of this particular agreement? Because it makes a terrific difference on our financing.
Well, I think broadly
What is happening with it?
broadly stated, there on the dashboard on this model, there are a whole series of assumptions. And these assumptions are also contained, and they're taken right from Mark's July 18th presentation to town council. And Mark, I think, just used as an example, as a result of a question for me, what would happen if the 16 million from the Park City Wind project went away? And you're right, Lillian. It does have an implication from the model, but there are a whole series of other assumptions here that, as Mark said, we could play with, that we could tweak. And I think what Mark is looking for is just input from this committee as to whether we think these assumptions are reasonable. And perhaps Mark is looking for any guidance on which assumptions might be a little bit, excessive.
That's the question I asked.
Yeah.
What would happen? What is happening with the $16 million?
As of now,
Is the contract being reconsidered? I mean, this puts us in limbo here.
Mark, maybe I could ask you to sort of restate what your goal was for having this committee react to your model here.
So I made the suggestion when I made this presentation to the town council that we'd have this group take a look at the model and respond to the assumptions that are included. Basically, we're looking for you to validate whether or not the assumptions are good or not. And if there are some assumptions that you don't think are accurate and should be adjusted, like, for example, the $16 million hosted room community agreement payment. If you feel that that's not realistic or an appropriate use of those funds, or those funds may never be received for some reason, you could suggest eliminate that assumption, put 0 for that number. And if we do that, here's how we would suggest we close the gap: by tweaking some of these other assumptions. Increasing a property tax contribution a little bit more for a longer period of time, perhaps increasing the interest rate return,
right,
investment return. And so I think really what we're looking for at the end of the day is just your validation on these assumptions.
Right. Well, I think if I could express my own point of view, first of all, on the 16 million, as far as we know now, the town has signed a new an amendment to the Park City Wind Host Community Agreement that involves a 16 million payments. And I think it's upon financial close. And I think that's defined in the new site agreement as it will be next fiscal year or 2 fiscal years from now. I'd have to go back and look. So I think it's reasonable to, based on what we all know now, to leave that 16 million in. I guess I have, in my overall view of this model, I spent some time over the last several days combing through it. One comment on the 16 million, just for people's edification. If you take out the 16 million, that puts cash flow in a deficit, but in 18 years from now, in 2042, that's when we would need additional resources, according to the cash flow tab, which is tab 1 of the model. So if the 16 million goes away, it doesn't have any impact for the next 18 years until, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, until the model goes negative and we need additional available resources. And that deficit, again, if you just take out the 16 million and make no other changes, that deficit remains from 2042, I think, to 2059, and then we come back into a surplus. So it's I just make that observation. I wanted to ask about some of your assumptions, Mark, if I could. But by and large, I think the model is very well done and very reasonable, and I think your assumptions seem to be reasonable. I wanted to ask about and I'm looking at page 10 of your July 18th presentation, where you talk about potential additional resources, and some of the changes in the assumptions, lodging tax, meal tax, vacation tax, hinge on, I believe, on the passage of the Municipal Empowerment Act. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring that during staff communications. At the end of the formal legislative session this year, when they adopted the budget, they did not act on the Municipal Empowerment Act. So
right.
Nothing's been approved under that act. However, I believe there will be some attempts to bring that forward between now and the end of this calendar year to try to get something passed, but it's not guaranteed. But just so you know, those additional funding tools are not yet available to us.
Right. So, Lillian, that would be another relevant thing to do. Again, there's a series of about 20 assumptions in this model. And, that's a case where traditional lodging tax, meals tax, you put in assumptions that would be effective if that act is passed.
No, this model does not include anything under the Municipal Empowerment Act. So what we could do, if you want to suggest this, what we could do is add those additional assumptions in here as though they will enact something under the Municipal Empowerment Act, but I didn't include anything because nothing has been passed.
Okay, so I'm just, so in your assumption, increases local meals tax from 0.75 to 0.1%. If that goes into effect, then on your assumptions page, your percentage increase on meals tax is now 4.5%. How would that change?
So what I would do is add in another assumption, enactment of the Municipal Empowerment Act, and I would increase the meals tax by another 0.25%.
Okay, so that 4.50 would become 4.75.
Could you put that table back up, please? Because we don't have it in front of us.
Well, I've got it on my computer screen right now.
I don't have it well, I don't have it. Everybody else might have it.
Can you see it now, Lillian?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this increase right here that you see right now, 4.5%, is based on historical growth for what we currently have. If that were the Municipal Empowerment Act were to be enacted, we would just add another 25 basis points.
Okay. And Mark, is this an annual increase in the meals tax?
If you look at the meals tax tab 3 here,
yeah,
here's the growth rate year over year.
Oh, okay.
4.8, 3.76, 5.17.
Yeah.
We had it down. Here, this is COVID. 20 went down 5%.
Okay.
12%, 21 jumped back up 39% in 22, 6% in 23, 5% in 24. Those are all actual year-over-year growth percentage increases and decreases. So the average over those years, excluding COVID years, is 4.76%. I went with 4.5, a little bit less.
All right, and then if so this is helpful. So your second assumption, potential additional resources, increases local rooms tax from 6% to 7%.
Yeah, that would impact this here, traditional lodging tax, 1.25%, and vacation rental, 3.5%.
And each of them would go up by
Each of them would
1%.
go up. Yep.
If the state approved it, and if our town council acted,
Yes,
Right.
it would require local action as well.
right? You don't have any assumption in here for motor vehicle excise tax increases.
No.
No, but it's not a large amount of money.
And of course, any of those increases that we're talking about under the Municipal Empowerment Act, the town council would have to vote to dedicate that new
Right.
revenue to
Right,
this.
they would not only have to vote to approve it, they would have to dedicate it to
Right.
CWMP.
Correct.
Yeah, so just looking at other assumptions, and this is, and models, they're designed to do what if analysis. Your general obligation bond rate, the 3.7%, I think that's based on our last bond financing several months ago. It seems to me if
we just issued bond in June.
Yeah.
3.7%.
it seems to me that if the Fed is going to do what almost everybody expects them to do, that 3.7 will go down.
Could get better. Yes.
Pardon?
It could become better. Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm not conservative with a lot of these assumptions, so kind of like painting a worst case scenario. Not a worst case, but just
Right. And you have a fairly conservative assumption here on health insurance increases. I think you said for a couple of years we had no increase in premiums, right?
We did. We had none, but this past year, it was 8%.
Yeah.
Increase, so.
Yeah. So that's probably a reasonably conservative assumption, and so forth. At any rate, I think this model is very, very sensible and conservative. I think that when we look going forward, this model depends on the current 5-year CIP and the spending that's planned in the current 5-year fiscal 25 to fiscal 29. The numbers could change significantly once the town manager and the town council approve the next CIP. So this model is limited in that it's only looking at the current 5-year plan.
That's correct. We're doing this in 5-year increments.
Right.
So earlier, Hector, that if we were to remove the $16 million for New England Wind or Park City Wind here, we don't go into a deficit situation until fiscal year 42.
Right.
That deficit is created by projects that were approved from 25 to 29, and that's it.
Right.
So here we are approving projects for the next 5 years, knowing that we're creating a deficit several years down the road. So we don't have the funding to continue to pay the debt service.
Right.
That 5-year capital program. So we got to be upfront about that. We can't approve financing these next 5 years worth of capital projects, knowing that by FY 42 we're gonna have a funding deficit.
Right. But as you showed in our August 26th meeting, we could drop the 16 million and tweak a couple of the other assumptions that we would be back into balance.
That's correct.
So I guess I'm interested in the committee's views on what comments anyone thinks CFAC would make to town council about this model. Again, I've stated my view. I think it's a very reasonable model with largely conservative assumptions based on what we know now, but it's really limited to the current 5-year plan. So that's the limitation of the model, not only the assumptions that are in here, but the fact it's only relevant for the current 5-year plan that we're in, and within 6 months or 9 months, we'll be discussing a new 5-year plan. I'm curious to know what other points of view people have on this.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom, go ahead.
So just sort of two sets of comments. One is that as an Excel model goes, I think it's well put together. It seems correct to me, which is always a concern when I put together Excel models.
Yeah,
Did I transpose something or do an incorrect formula? This seems to be working correctly to me.
yeah.
The other thing I would do is I think, yes, the assumptions are reasonable, but I think it would also make sense to identify the most at-risk assumptions. In other words, if something does go awry, where do we face the biggest problem? And I think it's pretty obvious if you just, I mean, that it's the New England wind contribution that, there's still opposition out there, right? And it's an uncertain financial future even for these companies. That's the biggest source of risk, I think, there. It's not saying that it will happen, that it won't occur, but that's the biggest source of risk. Most of the other changes in here, like investment rate of return at 2.5%, if, quite frankly, Mark, if the interest rates start to decline, you're going to see your investment rate, but those work in tandem to your favor in any event. Most of these I don't think have as dramatic an impact, and they can all be managed because some of them are dependent upon changes elsewhere. But I think one of the things we should point out is that, this is my take on it, that it is the biggest source of risk is the contribution, the Park City Wind contribution.
That's well put. Chuck, did you have any thoughts?
No, the only thought I had was sometimes when we did this in the corporate world, we tried to weight the impact of the assumptions. But I think that's the point that Tom just made. That there will be some that are more impactful than others, and there are also, the reality is there are some that are completely outside of it. The investment rate of return, for instance, which you brought up, there's going to be the level of interest rates, which is going to have a two-sided effect on the town, but there's also the reality of the constraints that the town has on how it can invest assets. And so there are going to be some of these that I kind of shrug and say, whatever, it's going to be a relatively close range. The ones like the New England wind contribution, and I'm afraid I'm not knowledgeable enough to know if there are others that are big impacts here. I would have just made the suggestion that somehow we at least identify, if not weight, the ones that are subject to either the most variability or the most variability weighted impact on whatever we do in the 5-year projection.
Yeah, that's right, which is why I focused on the wind thing, because there's a little bit of a binary nature there, right?
Yeah.
And it's either going to happen or not happen. We know that there will be an investment rate of return, maybe 2.5 and maybe 2, might be 3. But that'll be there. But the things that are the scariest are the things that might never materialize.
Yep.
Okay, these are all good points. Chris, are you still on?
I am still on, yes. I would agree with that generally. I mean, weighting which of those assumptions would have the most impact if they change is important, and which would have the most dramatic impact. I mean, I guess the other point would be if we have some kind of severe economic downturn, which of those assumptions are going to change, rooms taxes, meals taxes, that sort of thing. And what kind of effect would that have? But other than that, I mean, like Chuck and Tom were just saying, some of it's kind of, it might change, but not by significant amounts per se.
Okay, I think it's interesting. Again, speaking to the corporate world, when we were looking at a deal in the banking world, I mean, back in the mid-1990s, we would always build in a base case, a downside case, and then what we would call a break the model case when free cash flow would turn negative. And I remember in the 2010s, we get a new crop of analysts who had never been bankers in a world when interest rates, short-term rates, were 15%, 19%, as they were under Paul Volcker. So, Chris, I think your comment about in a severe downturn, which assumptions would change, and I guess I would look to Mark to sort of think about that, and maybe in the next meeting we could discuss how you would adjust these assumptions, Mark, in a recession, severe recession, something back like the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, or COVID again, another pandemic.
I would
Jeremy?
also add in the question of if there was, a hurricane, because I think that also shifts the town's priorities financially, as well as rooms taxes and other parts of our economy that are generated by tourism that would be affected with a natural disaster, particularly a hurricane. So
Yeah. So the last Category 5 hit the Cape was Hurricane Bob in 1992, if my memory serves. So suppose we had another Category 5.
That was a category 1, actually.
Excuse me, 1. I always mix up the categories.
You're lucky.
Yeah, so a hurricane Category 1, how would these assumptions change? And again, Mark, maybe you could sort of ponder that, and we could
That's
discuss that at
interesting.
next meeting.
Yeah,
Sorry.
That's an interesting thought, because obviously, in a hurricane, all revenue from meals and rooms taxes is probably going to be non-existent. On the flip side, construction would halt; it would cease. There'd be no sewer construction for a period of time. So I guess everything would freeze, and we would probably have at least a 2-year period of just no activity.
Right. And meantime, the town's expenses for cleanup and such would accelerate.
Right. So that would be a totally different, completely different category of what we need to finance outside of this program that we'd be dealing with. This program would essentially be frozen for a period of time.
Yeah. Interesting. Jeremy, thank you
and
for
if
that.
something like that happened, you'd have potential FEMA funds as well, federal funding. So, I mean, that's a really complicated model to try to predict. Even a recessionary model is more complicated to predict, but I think it would be useful to have some kind of worst case scenario. What if the tourist revenues dried up for some reason?
Yeah.
All right.
Give us some thought, Hector.
Mark, does the town have insurance that would kick in if there were a Category 1 hurricane?
Yes, we do. We would have insurance. Of course, it would come along with deductibles, but our coverages would probably be exceeded by the amount of damage. Therefore, it's eligible for FEMA reimbursements and so forth. So
yeah. So Chris is right. This would be very, very complicated. Lillian, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think this multivariate analysis is really good. And as you know, I questioned the 16 million to start out with. I think the idea of weighting each one of these components is a good idea. And also weighing in the risk of each, and we can play around with it and see what would happen if there were changes in the economy, the levels of inflation, the cost of the cost of doing business, and whether a downturn in the economy would change these. But I think it's a good exercise. We can play with this.
Yeah, what's interesting about the meals and rooms tax is that during the last Great Recession, we didn't have a local meals tax. So there's nothing to go back historically to look at to see how that was impacted by the recession. But, you know, that came about as an additional local taxing option to help communities recover from the Great Recession. So, but we could certainly replicate something like COVID happening again. You see the
Yeah.
numbers, I showed the numbers to you as to what, you know, meals and rooms taxes looked like when through COVID for a couple of years. We had some significant drop offs for a couple of years, but then they rebounded very strongly.
Yeah. And Jim Sproul, any thoughts here that,
No,
But
I
you
was
would-
gonna say, but I just was concerned about outside influences, what, more like, what if, and we really touched on it, out something happens to a school, you know, there's something needs to be immediate replaced, that are $50 million projects. I mean, that can go out to Prop 2.5 overrides, I guess, or something, but some more, I think more of, how would you express an outside concern? Like, what might happen if the voters said, wait a minute, this is all for only 1/3 the population of the community, you know, and we're all balanced, you know, just off the wall type stuff like that. You guys are much better at numbers than I am,
oh, I don't know about that.
but I think that you know, all the items have been thoroughly covered.
Okay.
Impressed with.
All right. So on this model, I don't know, Mark, maybe you can, you know, I don't want to create any make work for you, but maybe if there's any tweaks that you could make to the model to weight some of the assumptions, identify and build into the model those that might be variable, and if so, by how much. Maybe just give it some thought, and we could continue this discussion at the next meeting. But as I said, I think the model is great, and I've written down everything that all the comments that people made, with a view towards once we sort of finalize this discussion, then we can raise our hand and tell town council we're happy to make a short presentation on the model at a future meeting. Do people agree with that way of proceeding?
Yes, I
Yes.
think that's good.
Sounds fine.
Okay. All right, nothing else on the model. Let's move to the next item on the agenda. Any correspondence from committee members? Hearing none. Mark, any communications from you or your team?
So in addition to the Municipal Empowerment Act still hanging out there, hopefully we'll see some movement on that before the end of this calendar year. Also, what did not get passed by the legislature is a permanent authorization to continue with remote and hybrid public meetings. I believe that expires sometime in March or April of 2025. So that's still hanging out there. That was part of that was for consideration at this last round of legislative action during their annual budget adoption, but that didn't get acted upon. So that remains to be seen what they're going to do there. I would anticipate that they will allow that to continue with a permanent change in the law. So we'll see. And finally, what they did approve is a change in the tax title legislation. I'll send you some information about what it entails, but it changes what communities need to do in terms of how to go about foreclosing on a property, and then what it can recoup, what's the maximum amount of money that it can recoup from the foreclosure of that property and its subsequent sale. This was brought about by a Supreme Court case, the U.S. Supreme Court case that tried to eliminate predatory foreclosure sale practices that were some communities in other states across the country were doing, whereby, you know, they were foreclosing on somebody's home because they owed $10,000 in back taxes, let's say. They got possession of the property, they turn around and sold the property for $500,000. And so they made $490,000 profit on the foreclosure. And so the law tries to correct some of the existing Massachusetts laws to put it more in line with what the Supreme Court ruled, which would have limited the town's recoup from the sale of that property to $10,000, and they would have had to pay the other $490,000 to the previous owner of the property. You can't steal people's equity, right? That was the basis of the case. But it puts some other weird things in place. Like, we now have to go, if we're going to foreclose on a person's property, we now have to physically deliver a foreclosure notice to their front door, and try to serve it, which is, you know, concerning from a safety perspective. From the town employees, we would certainly probably have a deputy collector serve that notice, or a constable serve that notice, even probably a police officer with them.
Yeah.
But it also, interesting what it does is it changes the interest rate on properties that are in tax title to 8%. Currently, it's 16% if you fall behind in your taxes, and you go into tax title, you pay a 16% interest rate. They drop that to 8%. If you fall behind in your taxes and, you know, hasn't been transferred to tax title yet, you pay a 14% interest rate to the town collector on your outstanding taxes until they're paid in full. But after a period of time, if you make no attempt to make those payments on your back taxes at principal plus the 14% interest, you will get transferred to tax title. It's the only way we can perfect the town's interest in that, and those outstanding taxes due, is to record a lien against the property. And when we do so, the interest rate drops from 14% to 8%. So it kind of gives the property owner incentive not to pay the taxes, knowing that they're going to get a more favorable interest rate if we put them in the tax title. But the legislation really is to stop, you know, this predatory action that some communities were practicing across the country and stealing people's equity. We've never foreclosed on somebody's property in the town of Barnstable and turned around and sold it to make money. It just hasn't happened. In fact, it's been years since we've even foreclosed on somebody's property. We don't like to go through that process. It's a lengthy, expensive process. But it could have been very profitable at the end of the game if you turn around and sold it for the profit. But now you can't keep that profit. So you got to find a previous owner or owners. In some cases, there are several owners. It could have been in trust or something, and it could have been many beneficiaries. You'd have to find them all. You'd have to distribute the funds to them. It becomes a real administrative burden, this new legislation. But, you know, there's no incentive for us to go forward and foreclose on any property. The only case I can envision where we might is if it was somebody's second home and they weren't living in it year round. It was just a vacation home. They were delinquent on their taxes. They didn't care about paying their property taxes. Yeah, we might move forward with a foreclosure on something like that because there's just no incentive. It's not their main home. They're just coming down to the Cape and enjoying vacation every now and then, you know, realizing that, hey, I don't need to pay my taxes. I'll just let my equity pay it off eventually when I decide to sell the property. Yeah, again, we're not aggressive in pursuing foreclosures, but in certain circumstances it makes sense for us.
How many foreclosures does the town have in process at a given? None?
No.
And-
No.
And this go ahead.
We are working with an attorney out of Boston right now to identify some that may make sense to bring to land court, but it is a long, arduous process to get something through land court.
And this is this issue all arose out of a bill that was passed and signed by the governor.
Yeah, it was
It-
part of the, it was, what do you call outside section of the law as part of the annual budget, state budget. Yep, so it got approved. There was a lot of opposition against the proposed bill. Mass Municipal Association, several communities. I mean, our town wrote a letter expressing concerns about what was included in that bill, but it got passed.
Yeah,
But I would imagine there's going to be some attempts to tweak it to make some minor adjustments to it. I mean, it's good legislation in the sense it protects property owners' equity, right? And you don't want communities coming in there and foreclosing on properties and then turning around and making a bunch of money off it. And that's just not fair.
okay. Well, that's
That's
helpful.
all my updates.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you very much for that. I believe that should wrap it up. Just to tie off the loop, Mark, you're going to circulate version 7 to the committee as edited tonight.
Yep, I'll make a few changes at page 1 and move pages around. And
Okay,
the formatting's okay now. Circulate version, I'll call it version 7.
so we'll get it within 48 hours or so.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay,
Physically moving this week.
yeah, I know you're busy.
So.
Yeah, hope that goes well. Good luck to you. It's a pain to move. You have to throw a lot of stuff out. But you know what the rule is? If something's been in a box for more than a year, you don't need it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other comments? Any members of the committee? I appreciate the spirited discussion about the looking ahead section, and hopefully we can craft something that we can all feel reasonably comfortable with. Jim, I look forward to receiving some wording from you, and we'll go from there. So our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, I believe. Is that correct, Mark?
That's correct.
So in terms of any word, Jim, in terms of any language you're going to give to me, maybe you could shoot to get it to me by the end of the week.
Hopefully earlier than that. I'll work
Great.
on it.
Great. And then we can make some edits and some changes. And then what I'll do is circulate, a proposed new version of the entire document for people to review in advance of our next meeting 2 weeks from tonight. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Great. Chris, can you call the roll from your Star Market parking lot?
Yes, I'm home now. I drove home after we did the report there.
Okay, good.
Hector,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Lillian,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. And that's a wrap